Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bangladesh Weekly Roundup. I am Saqib Ali, your host in this program. Today is 17th February 2023, and we are going to talk about the past week from 11th of February to 17th. Before we go on, I wanted to give you a very brief background that Bangladeshi people are trying to come out of a 14-year-long authoritarian rule, and so the political developments is the most important in our country at this point. The government is also in the midst of a foreign exchange crisis. So this constitutional crisis and foreign exchange crisis and development economic crisis all together are connected in Bangladesh's case. So in this backdrop, we start the past week. On last Saturday, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the main opposition party, had, according to their prior announcement, held marches throughout the country at the lowest local government level, which we call union. As it was pre-announced, the ruling party, Awami League, had also announced that they will hold peace demonstrations in the very areas, in the vicinity of the same spots where the opposition was going to hold the marches. It was apparent that as BNP was trying to get their grassroots excited, spirited in the struggle against this authoritarian rule, the ruling party wanted to foil those marches so that the grassroots could not be energized. This we can also see from a statement from our planning minister, who is otherwise a gentleman. And he had said that BNP grassroots will have to be eradicated or will be eradicated. What kind of language is that? And I think that a gentleman like our planning minister, when he says these things, it only shows that the environment he's in, that is so intolerant, that is so undemocratic, that those are the kind of statements that is valued in that organization. So, given that background, the context, we can see that naturally there was a lot of disturbances on Saturday. In many of the places, the events went off peacefully, but in many places, there was violence, one-way violence that ensued when the police and the ruling party workers fell upon the opposition activists in over 50 spots as per the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's claim. Over 300 was injured, arrested over 200, police baton charged, arrested opposition activists, dispersed them, while the ruling party activists fell upon these opposition activists and then afterwards ransacked their offices. Now, this is not the environment where an opposition can do its work peacefully. The next day, on Sunday, the EU delegation, in an oblique reference to the mayhem unleashed by the police and the ruling party thugs, expressed deep concern at the politically motivated violence and encouraged peaceful and lawful political activities. On Monday, the next day, the Chief Election Commissioner of Bangladesh declared that the ruling party candidate for our next president had been elected unopposed, Mr. Muhammad Shahabuddin, a former judge, sessions and district judge of our lower judiciary, at the highest rung of the lower judiciary, and who later became a commissioner in the Anti-Corruption Commission. He is going to become the next president of Bangladesh. Mr. Shahabuddin, in his student life, was a district president of the student wing of the ruling party. He was also later on the leader of the youth wing of this party. After the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his family, he was supposedly, we were told that he was in jail for some time. So he is a very partisan person. That's what we think, because from his writings, from his prior statements, and from his record. He was also the president, or he was a member of the advisory council of Awami League before he became the president. So we know that Bangladesh is in a constitutional crisis where the ruling party wants to hold the elections under their authority, where the opposition is refusing to contest the election under the authority while the ruling party is in power because of the rigged elections in 2014 and 2018. So obviously the president will have a big role in this constitutional crisis, but the Awami League has selected a person who is partisan, who is not, it doesn't seem like he will be a unifying element in the coming crisis. It is suspected and feared that by this selection, that the ruling party is trying to tell us that their own president, their own person, who will be extremely partisan, he will use the bureaucracy and the police, maybe in another type of stratagem, to rig the election again in 2024, as they had done in 2014 and 2018, because Awami League doesn't have the popular support, and they know it, and they were going to lose the election anyway. So with this backdrop, we come to the most important news of last week, and that is the visit of the Counselor of State Department of US, Mr. Derek Chollet. I hope I'm pronouncing his name accurately. If not, I apologize. He spent Wednesday, 15th of February, in Dhaka. He had breakfast with the Foreign Secretary, and then he had meeting with the Foreign Minister and the Prime Minister. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Prime Minister's meeting and the Foreign Secretary's meeting. It seems that Mr. Derek Chollet wanted to impress upon the Prime Minister that United States thought that democracy and human rights were precondition for a social development and development in general. So I think United States tried to explain to the Prime Minister that the Prime Minister's concept of development without democracy is not acceptable to the Americans. I mean, this was not directly stated, but this is the implication. And the counselor had also talked about that the next election has to be inclusive, and that United States and Bangladesh relationship is deepening and for all time, including during the election. By that, I think Mr. Derek Chollet wanted to say that United States is not going to go out of Bangladesh during this election time. So the Prime Minister assured the Undersecretary of her government's sincerity, but it seems that he was not fully convinced. Why I'm saying that, I will come to it a little bit later. And in the in the breakfast meeting with the foreign secretary, one thing stood out to me, and that was that when foreign secretary had stated that Bangladesh wanted peaceful Myanmar-Bangladesh border, at that time, Mr. Derek Chollet had assured him that the United States was working toward durable peace in that part of the world, part of the region. Now, a durable peace means that peace has to have the consent and the assent of the people. And that will require change of the ground reality in Myanmar for that to happen. So it seems that the United States is already in our southeast Bangladesh, and they are doing whatever they're doing. And even if Bangladesh is not liking it, they have no choice but to go along with it. The counselor, he had a meeting with the leading representatives of the media on Wednesday evening. That was his last, I think, public engagement. In that, he had said that United States was concerned at the suppression of the repression of the civil society, and the lack of human rights, the violation of human rights, and also regarding the earlier 2014 and 2018 elections. These are the things that give United States a pause, and I think that what started in December of 2021 is coming to a stage where it is coming to some kind of conclusion of a phase of our relationship. Because I think that this Derek Chollet visit was very important. Next month, our foreign minister and foreign secretary are going to go to Washington. The foreign minister is going to meet supposedly the Secretary of State, and the foreign secretary is going to meet the Undersecretary for Political Affairs. I think that all the visits that have come to Bangladesh all this time, they have gone from one step above another one. The higher ranking officials came later on, there were some exceptions, but otherwise. And I think that next month, the United States State Department is going to conclude all their findings, and perhaps inform the president or their president during the Democracy Summit that is going to be held at the end of March. And perhaps at that time, the administration, the president will have to give his approval, his considered approval, consideration and decisions regarding what will happen later on, in order to perhaps persuade this government, the present government, the ruling government, to hold a peaceful and free and fair election. That same day, on Wednesday, there was another visit by the new Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Vinay Mohan Katra. I hope I have pronounced his name correctly too. If not, I apologize to him too. He conveyed the Indian government's full confidence in the leadership of Sheikh Hasina, and had invited her for the G20 meeting that is going to be held in September in Delhi. And at that time, the new foreign secretary also had a foreign secretary consultation with the Bangladesh counterpart, and that means that they covered all bilateral, regional, and global issues of interest. But what I would like to point out over here is that that Indian Foreign Secretary's statements and the U.S. Undersecretary's statement had clearly pointed out the divergence of these two friendly countries, allies, if I might say, um, on this issue of the restoration of democracy in Bangladesh. And I hope that India will take the side of the people of Bangladesh rather than a party which had, I think, has created tremendous resentment of the people of Bangladesh in the last 14 years. I mean, and I hope that India is not on the wrong side of the history. I have to talk about two more things because these two were important. I think we not only have to talk about the senior government officials, but we have to talk about the general people of Bangladesh, the general situation of Bangladesh, in order to get a full comprehensive idea of what is happening. On last Sunday, first year female student of Islamic University had stayed overnight in the guest room of the dormitory without taking permission of the some student of ruling party student wing leader. Once it was found out, she was taken to a room for several hours, 3-4 hours. She was beaten, harassed, tortured, and she was even filmed at different stages of undress. This was done to dissuade her from going to authorities afterwards, and also perhaps as a to keep her in check, to be able to blackmail her later on. She was traumatized. The next morning she left, she went home, and then she wrote a letter to the authorities, and this came out. This has become a big issue. The Human Rights Commission has condemned this issue. Especially this filming at different stages of unrest, that is very revolting to a conservative society like in Bangladesh. So yes, Human Rights Commission has had to speak out. Usually they don't. Then the High Court, as a matter of fact, has ordered the district administration to do an investigation. What is important is that in our universities, I can, and I will give you another example. There was a Chittagong Medical College in Bangladesh, which is the second largest city is Chittagong, Chattogram. So in Chittagong Medical College, 4 students were beaten up by 15 to 20 students in a torture room last week, or the week before, and it just came out this week. And on the suspicion that these 4 students were members of Islami student wing, and they were not. I mean, at least till now we don't have any proof. So on a basis of suspicion, they were beaten up severely, and 2 of them had to be admitted to the intensive care unit. And they have just, I think, come out of the intensive care unit and taken to Kebe, their student hospital ward or cabin. So, and they were also beaten for hours and hours. So what I wanted to say is that how come universities have torture rooms? How can a student beat up another fellow student for hours at end? I see the inhumanity of the student wing. I'm not saying that this is only Awami League, other parties also did it. But this is the legacy of our 50 years, 5 decades, and this was started by the ruling party, Awami League in 1972. This tradition of making thugs out of students. If students cannot be free, what kind of citizens are we creating? We are creating citizens who will be blind, who will absolutely be submissive to authoritarian rule. And this is the legacy of Awami League. The final thing I wanted to say is about Dhaka. Dhaka is a city which is dearest to our heart. But, the week before, we had this terrible earthquake in Turkey. And that also, in a way, got us to think about what will happen to our city if that happened. So I want to give you few information regarding Dhaka and wanted to show you what kind of development we can get after 14 years of one-party rule. According to report on Sunday, 12th February, 42 preceding days from that day, we did not have healthy air for a single day. Our air for 42 days at a stretch up to 12 February, maybe it is continuing now, was either unhealthy, very unhealthy, or dangerous. The sources of the pollution include the transportation vehicles, these buses without and trucks without fitness, because these are owned by the leaders of the ruling party. Then you have the construction going on where the construction sites are not covered by any plastic sheet or anything. So, dust is all over the place. And then we have these brick kilns which are spewing smoke and carbon monoxide and carbon monoxide. If I can just a survey of 10 schools, high schools in Dhaka, and these are good high schools where middle class boys and girls go to. A survey of these 10 schools found that 40% of students between the ages of 9 and 12 had respiratory problems. So, you have the air quality, and because of that, you have the respiratory problems of these students. They are from the middle class. We are not talking about the urban slums. We are not talking about the urban, the lower income group. It is even in the middle income group that the students cannot breathe properly. This survey was done by Bangladesh Engineering University, UK-based Center for Clean Air Research, University of Philadelphia, and Houston University. So we cannot. This is a bona fide and a bona fide survey. When our children are being damaged that way through this so-called development, of the 20 cities, most vulnerable to earthquake in the world, Dhaka ranks second most vulnerable. And Dhaka has a population of 22 million people. According to this survey, which was done by 3 universities of Dhaka and Tokyo, Osaka, and Tohoku University of Japan, if an earthquake of 4 Richter scale or just above it, if that is what hits Dhaka, then about 56% of the buildings will either collapse or get severely damaged. But if there is an earthquake comparable to what happened in Turkey, Syria, then 80% of the buildings of Dhaka will collapse. And they will probably collapse like pancakes. And this will create massive, catastrophic deaths. Even could be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands. It is in this kind of situation that we live. And it is from here I bid you goodbye for this week. God bless you.